So, in this portion of the Bible study, I'm going to be going over mocking. And, this is something that, I've had to deal with, myself as well. Um, and not necessarily defenseless people or people who, it's obvious we shouldn't be making fun of, like the sick or the handicapped and things like that. But at times, not using discretion and possibly saying things I don't mean in a moment, quite possibly hurting people's feelings, and um, not really understanding the effect that that has on them, and also God. And so, I've learned this personally, from my perspective as well. But it's also, something I've experienced as well online with mocking and different things about, whether it be my testimony or about different things that I've talked about, or um, whatever the case may be. People find a reason to joke about things, and at times we got to be careful with those things. That's not saying that we can't find humor in things, but I hear a lot that too much of anything can kill you or is bad for you, and so that's something to understand, and that's something that I had to learn myself with humor. Just recently, actually, about 4 months back, I went through some things, and it was like 3 days that I didn't find anything funny. Um, and I'm glad God put me through that, because it was just certain things were getting out of hand with um, things that I were finding funny, and I had to really ground myself and learn to separate myself from people. Um, and that's part of the problem with online nowadays. A lot of people jump on a bandwagon, so one person thinks something is funny, then the other person thinks something funny, and not knowing probably the genesis or the origin of that thing, and yet people are getting on a train or a bandwagon, um, not understanding that they could be quite possibly coming against somebody who is righteous in God's eyes, and in return coming at God at the same time. And it's important that we don't do that, because we understand through many different scriptures that God is going to get the last laugh. God is going to mock his enemies in the end. And, it goes over this thing many different times. And so what I wanted to do is take the time to go over some of those scriptures. Um, I also think it's important to bring up because of the whole Drewski skits and different things. Now, me personally, I don't take anything personal from the Juicy skits. I understand he's a comedian. I understand it's art. It's times where I felt like certain things that I do have been taken shots at. You got to be okay with that when you're viewing comedy and you're expecting to laugh. You got to expect to be the butt of the joke sometimes. But at times, certain things cross boundaries that they shouldn't. And I'm not necessarily saying that Drewski um, had bad intentions with saying certain things about the church, but it's not a good look to necessarily be talking bad about the church, especially when certain things like they like the church is just recovering off the TD Jakes stuff, many other things, and it's like people like the church can't catch a break, and people continue mocking, the church. Um, and though it's people who are representing the church bad, um, people become numb to it. And so across the board, it's like all churches get mocked, or um, all churches are looked at a certain way because TD Jakes did this. And TD Jakes, you can't compare TD Jakes with everybody, but my whole point is by people um, mocking one thing in particular or one person in particular, it gives people a license to then, think it's okay to continue doing that, and quite possibly end up messing up, mocking the wrong person, and in return be mocking God. And so I want to go over certain scriptures that prove that. I'm gonna be in the book of Psalms mostly, and I'm gonna finish off in Colossians. These are gonna be very short reads, besides Psalm 22, but we're gonna get this through this pretty quick, hopefully less than 12 minutes or so. I'm I'm going to read, we're at Psalm 1 and verse 2. Actually, verse 1 and 2. Psalm 1, verses 1 and 2. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor sitteth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. I just read the language of that and got a deeper understanding of in his law does he meditate. But to not move off subject, it was just talking about the scorner, the person who scoffs at everything, that likes to mock everything or make light of everything. Those are things that we should stay away from, and people that we should stay away from. As I've said, now I respect the things of God, but there's been at times where I've personally taken things too far, and God had to check me on that. And I think it's important that we understand the seriousness of that, because, as I've said, God will let you do certain things and think you're getting away with it just to get you at the very end, and you don't want to be coasting and thinking everything is good, and then in the end have to pay for something and not understand that you're guilty of that thing. So it's important to be cognizant of that. We're going to read Psalm 2, verse 4. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh, and the Lord shall have them in derision. So those that mock the Lord, mock his anointed, the Lord is going to put them in confusion. And a lot of people are taking this period of grace for granted, in my opinion. I think we all could get a lot closer to God. And if I'm speaking for myself, I know I can get a whole lot closer and do a whole lot better. And so, as I've said, I want to encourage anybody who needs to do so. And hopefully these messages are encouraging you, understanding that the serious nature of God and what he's going to do to those who are offensive to him. The next verse, we're going to read Psalm 22, 1 through 10. Psalm 22, 1 through 10. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me, and from the words of my ruin? O my God, I cry in the daytime, but thou hearest not, and in the night season I am not silent. But thou art holy, O thou that inhabitest the praises of Israel. Our fathers trusted in thee. They trusted, and thou did deliver them. They cried unto thee, and were delivered. They trusted in thee, and were not confounded. But I am a worm, a no man, a reproach of man, and despised of the people. All they that see me laugh me to scorn. That goes back to the scorner verse. And they shall shoot out the lip. They shake the head, saying, he trusted in the Lord, that he should deliver him. Let him deliver him, seeing he delighted in him. But thou art he that took me out of the womb, and thou didst make me a hope when I was upon my mother's breast. And I was cast upon thee from the womb. Thou art my God from my mother's belly. And so this is David prophesying words that Christ would eventually speak. But we understand most of these examples are going to come through Psalms. David, felt the burden of this, obviously. But in this situation, we could see that Christ felt the mocking when he went through when he went through his trial and different things. He felt the mocking of those different people. He felt the betrayal and all of that. And the people spitting on him, making a crown of thorns and different things. And so um, those people had to pay. And it's important that we recognize that doing things unto God's children and his anointed, it comes with a heavy cost. You don't want to have to pay that cost in the end. So let's keep on going. Psalm 37 and 13 is where we're going next. Psalm 37, 13. The Lord shall laugh at him, for he seeth that his day is coming. And that's for them that, like I was saying earlier, think that they're getting away with certain things. Like, there's people who have been doing things for so long that think that because they haven't been judged for it or because they haven't paid for it, whether physically or whatnot. As I've said, man, there's been times where I look at people and it's like, if I did that same thing, man, I'll be here or there. And it's because, God sets a different standard for his children, but at times he will let people think that they're getting away with something and just to bring the hammer down on them. So it's important to not be in that group. Make sure you're not following the lead of these people, who could possibly lead you in this direction. So it's important to take heed of this. It says, the Lord shall laugh at him, for he seeth that his day is coming. Psalm 55 and verse 12. We got another psalm after that, and then we're going to finish off in Colossians. Psalm 55 and 12. For it was not an enemy that reproached me, then I could have borne it. Neither was it he that hated me, that did magnify himself against me. Then I would have hid myself from him. But it was thou, a man mine equal, my guide and my acquaintance. David was pretty much going over here betrayal. And, we have to understand that those are real emotions that people feel. And so, at times I voice this thing myself, but it's like people take light of that and then they mock you even more for, trying to find a resolution to certain things. They try to make certain things worse for you. And that end up, for me anyway, is helping me to see, who has the right motives, what people are doing things for, because I notice the people who get corrected too, and I see the fruit of that correction. And, that gives me hope in that relationship and maintaining that connection with them. But there's other people, like, I could say certain things, I'm going through this, I'm going through that, and it hasn't mattered. I'm grateful God is helping things get better. I'm having, a lot more things happen for me and more things to look forward to. But there was a period of time to where things were very hard. Like, I would get off of here at times after talking about certain things with people and just cry. Like, and I'm man enough to admit that. And I probably had to go through those things for different reasons, but they made me who I am. They also let me know that, you ain't got a bunch of friends out here. I wouldn't say that you're alone, but you have to understand that everybody isn't your friend. Everybody isn't trying to help you, and everybody isn't going to be there for you when it matters the most. There's some things you got to consider. And as we see here, David dealt with betrayal. The Lord dealt with betrayal. And so you need to understand the importance of that and how mocking and different things like that can send people into different mind states. and they start feeling betrayal. They feel all these different things from the very people that was supposed to help them or be a help to them. Um, and so, moving on, Psalm 89. Psalm 89, and we're going to read verses 48 through 51. What man is he that liveth and shall not see death? Shall he deliver his soul from the hand of the grave? Lord, where are thy former love and kindness, which thou swearest unto David in thy truth? Remember, Lord, the reproach of thy servants. How do I bear in my bosom the reproach of all the mighty people? Wherewith thine enemies have reproached, O Lord, wherewith they have reproached the footsteps of thine anointed, where they mock the footsteps of God's anointed, the things that they may have to go through, like with Job's situation. Job's friends were, giving him bad advice or, telling him certain things that he didn't need to hear about his situation. And it's important that we recognize the counsel that we're coming from. As I've said, laughter and different things have been a means of healing for me. But God also showed me how that's folly as well, to continue in that, to be in that state of mind all day and all night. As I've said, it's good to have fun, but you have to have a balance with certain things. And, it's up to us to be wise and have discernment with that. And so, just something to consider as well. We're going to finish off in Colossians 3 and verse 17. Book of Colossians. Colossians chapter 3 and verse 17. And whatsoever ye do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks unto God and the Father by him. So it's something that I want people to recognize. Whatever you're doing, make sure you're doing with your integrity and, unto the Lord. As I've said, I believe that some people are being used as a means of healing for different people. But, at times, different people can get on board of mocking people and different things. And as I said, even with the Drewski skits, while I don't see issue with the things that he's been doing, there'll be people who, that could be a bad example for, and so they feel licensed to mock whatever they see about the church, not knowing that they're about to face swift and strict judgment from the Most High God. All witches on my, that are following me, that are mocking me, you're going to have to pay. I see different things that people post, and just know I pay attention. I just don't get absorbed in all of that. It's a lot going on. It's a lot going good, and I'm trying to really focus on what's going good and making sure that, I'm taking the right steps so, I don't miss out on any opportunities going forward here. But I can say for me, my experience dealing with this has, really slowed me up. I've healed from it since then, and then I got to a place to where, I was just doing it too much left and not taking things serious. And, God had to get me to a place to where, he had to remind me, like, it's all right to have fun, it's all right to laugh, but you have to know when to be serious. And it's not just the obvious times. Sometimes you got to set forth that example so other people, just learn not to take light of things. And so hopefully this helped you guys out with taking the Most High God seriously and, considering your ways when it comes to laughing, joking, and mocking other people and, how it affects God. Peace. Peace.